Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Good, bad, crazy martinis for you today, as usual. But we've got quite a bit to talk about today. Last week, of course, Donald Trump. This week, it's Hunter Biden in trial number 1 that he's going to be part of this year. This is the gun trial. And then later this year, just in time for the fall campaign season, actually, we've got the tax charges case. Jim, so jury selection underway in the gun felonies. 3 charges Hunter Biden is facing. He is, of course, accused of illegally and falsely filling out the forms to purchase a firearm, and specifically whether or not he was a drug user. The Biden legal team, headed up by Abby Lowell, if you remember the Clinton impeachment era, he was very, very prominent for the Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee back then, and he's had many high-profile clients since then. They tried to get this case tossed again. Judge Mary Ellen Noreika, who blew up the plea deal between the Justice Department and Hunter Biden's lawyers and future prosecution, said no to that. She did allow a second version of the paperwork to be filed, but also noted that you didn't check yes on that one either. So we move forward. The president has issued what you would expect in terms of a statement saying we love our son. Not going to talk about this a whole lot more. The first lady, Hunter's stepmom, is in the courtroom as jury selection begins today. So, Jim, as you have chronicled many, many times with Hunter Biden, and again over the weekend when we found out that he's also a deadbeat and paying his ex-wife, this is a guy with bad judgment after bad judgment after bad judgment, and it's good that he's potentially facing justice here. Will you get a jury in Delaware to convict a Biden? I don't know. It seems pretty cut and dried, though, in terms of what the law is and what he didn't do here.
Correct. And by the way, when you mentioned that, what I wrote over the weekend, Greg, we should clarify. This is Hunter Biden's ex-wife that he didn't pay alimony for, separate from the stripper he impregnated and refused to pay child support for. I realize this gets very confusing. There are a lot of women that Hunter Biden has done wrong, but like this is a different one. And that case did not involve child support because the children are over 18. Keep that in mind, by the way, next time you hear Hunter Biden referred to as a kid, that he's older than you and I are, and you and I are not spring chickens. So this is you can say this is a conditional good martini or a tentative good martini, but you figure the Biden campaign and Democrats would have preferred for a little more space between the Trump conviction we saw on late last week and the beginning of the Hunter Biden trial. And I think the fact that the Biden himself and the Biden campaign and the Democrats will spend all weekend and really weeks to come saying there's nothing worse than a convicted felon could look really bad in the not too distant future if, Hunter Biden is convicted. And it certainly seems straight up obvious that, yes, he committed the crime here. The argument, I think one of the arguments the Biden campaign, the Hunter Biden and his legal team wanted, boy, there's a Freudian slip, the legal team and the campaign.
Is there much of a difference?
In 2024, they're kind of interchangeable. The Hunter Biden legal team wanted to bring in an expert on drug addiction. And apparently the argument they were going to put before the judge is that you cannot hold Hunter Biden liable or legally responsible for claiming that he was not addicted to drugs under a legal form that he'd signed under penalty of perjury. You can't hold him responsible for that because he was addicted to drugs at the time. Which of course, yes, that's the whole reason they put that on there. And the idea, and I thought about this in the context of President Biden's statement, the very short statement issued. I am the president, but I am also a dad. Jill and I love our son, and we are so proud of the man he is today. So proud of the man he is today. Hunter's resilience in the face of adversity and the strength he has brought to his recovery are inspiring to us. A lot of families have loved ones who have overcome addiction and know what we mean. As the president, I don't and won't comment on pending federal trial cases. By the way, he made a bunch of jokes about Trump during his trial. I know you're free on Wednesdays and the president's very busy, right? So let's stop patting ourselves on the back for holding our tongue. But anyway, as a dad, I have boundless love for my son, confidence in him, and respect for his strength. Our family has been through a lot together, and Jill and I are going to continue to be there for Hunter and our family with love and our support. I have no gripe with the second half of that statement. I just want to make the observation that Joe, first of all, like, it's not just like, oh, it's a drug addiction. And look, everybody, almost probably there's not a single American who doesn't know somebody who has dealt with addiction, whether it was addiction to drugs, addiction to alcohol, some other immensely self-destructive behavior. But there's also the kind of this mentality of like the drugs came along and made you do this, and that there's no sense of individuals, that at no point did you make the decision to take drugs again. At no point did you make the decision to start drinking again. At no point did you make it, this kind of this waving of this. It's, it's like demonic possession. It just happened. It was this thing that had nothing to do with this. And I don't think that is necessarily correct. And I just think you look at, like, did the drugs, Greg, make Hunter Biden attempt to claim the prostitutes he slept with as a business deduction on his taxes? Was that deduction? Was that, not paying child support for Navy for like the first 7 years of her life, and then settling it by giving her paintings that she could, was that the drugs? Was that okay? There is kind of this hand-waving sense that the drugs came along and they turned Hunter Biden into a bad person, and it's just so terrible, and he can't be held responsible for anything he did while drugs were in his life. And then the second thing, which kind of has been sticking in my craw. There's obviously an element of myth-making involved in every presidential campaign. You can think back to John Kennedy and Camelot and Bill Clinton, the man from Hope. But there's always this idea of what a presidential candidate is and what the presidential candidate actually is. In Joe Biden, he was the man from Scranton, Pennsylvania, a devout Catholic, an old-fashioned guy, a throwback. My word is my bond. It's all, the kind of this small town values. In fact, Biden himself has said this is a battle between values of Scranton and the values of Mar-a-Lago. Okay, but your son is Caligula. Like, don't tell me you're the most, Norman Rockwell, Mayberry kind of guy when your son is like leaving this trail of destruction with prostitutes and impregnations and drug addiction and lost firearms and all that kind of stuff. I kind of feel like, is it entirely Joe Biden's fault that Hunter Biden is a deeply, deeply troubled man? No, but I think this makes me raise the question, is Joe Biden this terrific dad? Is this, I don't want to completely hold Joe Biden responsible for this, but I think you can say this is a glaring contradiction to the image of good old-fashioned Joe Biden that the campaign wants to pitch. And the contradiction, of course, is you want to say, well, I'm Joe Biden and no one has indicted me yet. And I'm a good guy, but I'm not like that Donald Trump character. Well, yes, but your son has a lot of, and oh, by the way, you've been arguing for tougher penalties for gun crimes for a long time, and your son lied on a place. You've been calling for tougher penalties for drug users for a long time, and your son's had a serious drug addiction problem. You've been arguing about the need for the rich to pay their fair share of taxes, and your son's a tax cheat who's evaded. Like, all of these things start to add up that you start saying, hey, Biden's, you don't practice what you preach on this. So again, I think this will be a fertile territory for the Trump campaign to complain and to attack Biden over, and we'll see how this shakes out over the next couple of months.
To me, the Joe Biden character issue that has always stuck with me, even beyond his demonization of Clarence Thomas and Robert Bork and all this kind of stuff, is when he demonized the guy who was involved in the accident with his first wife. His first wife was technically at fault in the accident. Biden blamed him and accused him of being a drunk driver for decades, until finally the guy's family threatened to sue him. And finally he stopped talking about that. So this idea that he's,
the story was sad enough as is. The truth is bad enough. Everyone would feel the same level of sympathy. You don't need to and you can kind of understand feeling that way, wanting to scapegoat someone, wanting to have someone to blame. But there is this guy who probably feels terrible about what happened, but who was not in the wrong for that accident, who's feeling bad enough as is. And Joe Biden's got to turn it into this, part of his campaign stump speech. So,
right. No, exactly. And just the thing about trying to blame his failure to admit that he's a drug user on the fact that he's a drug user. For some reason, it reminds me of this great Rush Limbaugh story from back when he had the TV show, back in the early to mid-'90s, right when he was really exploding onto the scene. And the story he was talking about was the Menendez brothers. Remember Eric and Lyle Menendez, who killed their parents and then were convicted for it? Well, I believe it was in the sentencing phase. The Menendez brothers were asking for leniency because they were orphans. And so Rush Limbaugh was saying, yes, because you killed them. I don't think that's a good argument.
Greg, I feel like America's sweater market never recovered after the Menendez brothers. Something about that just said, yeah, you can't trust these guys.
Because you know who else was big in the sweater game back then? Cosby. So
those watching the video excerpts of this program will notice Greg and I, even in wintertime, don't wear sweaters very often. No, give credit where it's due. The sweater vest was partially redeemed by Rick Santorum.
That's true. That's true.
But most of us moved on to Youngkin fleeces. Hey, we do talk about fashion on this show a lot.
Lamar had the plaid shirts and the exclamation point. I mean, there's all sorts of branding that goes into this stuff. But yes, so not a sympathetic argument. Good job by the judge not to go with that. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. And Anthony Fauci, the former NIH top dog, or at least in the allergies and infectious diseases area. I guess Dr. Collins was the official head of NIH during most of the COVID situation. And well, Fauci's going to be testifying before the Oversight Committee. He was interviewed by the committee a number of months ago in preparation for his on-the-record testimony today. And two things are standing out that if you want to grab torches and pitchforks, I don't blame you at all. When you think about what your family was asked to do, mandated to do in many different cases, long before we even got to the vaccine mandates, about how you were supposed to conduct yourselves in public. And so you highlight this in the Jolt today. So one of the sequences talks about the 6-foot social distancing rule. Question, do you recall when discussions regarding the at least a 6-foot threshold began? And he's like, what do you mean, in schools? No, I mean, anywhere. He says, well, I don't recall. It just sort of appeared. I don't recall like a discussion of whether it should be 5 or 6 or whatever. It was just a 6-foot rule. And then goes on and on and on. And he says, yeah, I think that would fall under the category of empiric. Just an empiric decision that wasn't based on data or even data that could be accomplished. How is it empiric if it's not based on data?
Not say.
I don't get that. Then,
it wasn't weather related. We just made the decision whether it rained or not. Well, that makes it weather related. That's you're a very smart man, Dr. Fauci. We're pretty sure you know what you're talking. Here's a dictionary. Let's just double check the definition, because I'm pretty sure empiric means based on the data. It doesn't mean it's not imperial. It doesn't mean the Galactic Empire and Darth Vader are doing it. It just means it's
So then we get to the one that's going to infuriate you possibly even more. The masking of children all the way down to 2 years old. And then the question, the WHO recommended against masking children less than 5 because masks are, and I'm quoting, not in the overall interest of the child. And then against children 6 to 11 from wearing masks because, again, quoting of the potential impact of wearing a mask on learning and psychological development. Was there ever a cost-benefit analysis done on the unintended consequences of masking kids versus the protection that it would give them? Not to my knowledge. Do you recall reviewing any studies or data supporting masking for children? You know, I might have, Mitch, but I don't recall specifically that I did. I might have. So then they ask about all the studies that have been done since then, talking about the learning loss and the slowed development because they couldn't see their teachers' mouths when they were speaking. Have you followed those studies? No, but I believe there are a lot of conflicting studies, too, that say, yes, there's an impact, and there are those that say there's not. Really? I think we've got an overwhelming avalanche of data proving that closing schools and masking kids was a giant mistake, especially once we learned very early on, Jim, that kids were not getting it very easily, and they certainly weren't getting it very seriously.
Now, before we go any further, Greg, I want to emphasize that the 3 Martini Lunch podcast, our official position is that you should not sneeze in other people's faces. That this is, we might have doubts about the masking policy. We do not like boogers flying out of your mouth and nose and going onto other people. So yes, cover your mouth when you cough, cover your nose when you sneeze. Don't try into your elbow. Don't do it into people's faces like that. That makes legitimate sense. But 6 feet always seemed like it are very arbitrary. And in fact, the woman who ended up being Surgeon General under Biden, one of the school systems had reached out to her and said, how much distance do we need between the desks? And they said, 3 feet should be fine. And then she became Surgeon General under Biden. She said, no, it's got to be 6 feet. And so we'd known that this was not based on data. This was based on gut. This was based on an impression of how close can or should you, could you make the argument that some level of distancing during an ongoing pandemic makes sense? Sure. But the 6 feet and 6 feet obviously is a lot. It's very tough to put people in a room in most of our, most of our offices, most of our stores, most of our classrooms, all kinds of places, 6 feet distance is pretty tough to keep. We're used to having much less personal space in our society. And which, the whole time on this and on the masking of kids, folks like you and I and a whole bunch of Americans were told, trust the science. That if you disagreed with this, if you had doubts about this, you were anti-science. I am the science, Fauci said at one point, echoing Judge Dredd and Sylvester Stallone. I am the law. That was, how dare you? This was coming down to you on 2 stone tablets. And now, finally, under oath before the House Oversight Committee, Fauci says, this was a gut call. It was our feeling. It just seemed right. By the way, I want to congratulate the House Oversight Committee for releasing this late on Friday. Way to go, fellas. The day after the Trump decision, the Trump verdict. So Fauci is testifying today. I have no doubt this is going to come up in questioning. I think this is out there. One of my multiple employers, the Washington Post, did a big story on this. The good news is that I'm not seeing this getting brushed under the rug the way you might have expected. Kind of just also a little asterisk to this. Not directly related to Fauci, but on this theme of, hey, a lot of what you were told during the COVID pandemic turned out to not be true. Alina Chan is a fantastic viral researcher. And she, very early on in the pandemic, said, this looked like it could be a lab leak. And laid out the evidence very carefully, never got out in front of her skis. Co-wrote a book with Matt Ridley, another great, sharp mind on this. Not a crazy conspiracy theorist, not somebody who goes off and chases every far-fetched idea. Just looked at the data, looked at the possibility, and, listeners probably remember me ranting about this from about, April 2020 to, for a good 2-3 years there. And she has an op-ed in the New York Times, and really a very big, long, detailed one, pointing to all the evidence for a lab leak. And I think what stood out about it to me today, Greg, is it had infographics, those little, things that move around and maps and where the bats would have been found and all that stuff. In other words, the New York Times itself, they didn't just take it and print it. It had to put a lot of effort into it. So this is about as close as we're going to get to the New York Times editorial board saying, hey, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is not something that's crazy and far-fetched. This is not racist, as one of the New York Times science correspondents had insisted during the pandemic. Now, again, is a smoking gun 100% proof? No. But as I've been arguing for years now, the coincidences are just too much to buy. The circumstantial evidence just keeps piling up higher and higher and higher that there was not one but 2 institutions in that city doing gain-of-function research, including cleavage Fourier. The gist is they were doing this kind of gain-of-function research on bats, coronaviruses found in bats. And lo and behold, we find this. It starts infecting people in Wuhan. Oh, by the way, we've never found it in a bat. Doesn't that seem strange? So you add all that up, that certainly points in the direction of a lab leak. So on the one hand, this is great. On the other hand, hey, America, remember everything you were told in 2020? This is a big old Emily Latella. Never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind.
3 thoughts on this. First of all, Morenz, the guy that we talked about a couple of weeks ago who was helping to hide all the FOIA requests. Look out for the bus, buddy, because Anthony Fauci ain't going down for that. You're going to get smacked today. Secondly, Republicans on the Hill. I'm not even sure this is 101. You dump the bad news when there's a massive news cycle. Not the stuff that makes you look good. That's the stuff that you need to make sure people actually have a chance to see. And finally, talking about the distancing, the one thing, Jim, the one thing that I hoped would stick around after the pandemic was people staying home when they were sick. It didn't work out that way. I don't know why. That should have been the most obvious takeaway full time. But last couple of winters, people don't seem to care.
I don't know about you. Not only do people not stay home when they're feeling sick, whether it's COVID or the flu or anything else. Greg, I don't know about you, but it seems like they immediately feel a need to get on a plane. And they feel a need to sit behind me with cholera. Okay, are you okay? The exit room? I'm fine. Like, yeah, you really, that sounds like some bad bronchitis there, buddy. That's, would you like a lozenge,
Oh, it's just allergies.
Yeah, The green globs of phlegm would be my first hint that it's more than just allergies.
All right. Well, we're going to have a Biden DOJ bookend to our podcast today. We started with Hunter potentially facing the music here. We'll see how the trial goes in Delaware. But now we've got the Justice Department with, Jim, what might be the most far-fetched explanation for why we couldn't possibly hear the actual interview between the special counsel, Robert Hur, and President Biden in terms of the classified documents investigation. We saw the report where Hur, of course, said that Biden, because of his faulty memory and couldn't remember within a number of years when his son died and couldn't remember exactly when he was vice president, no jury's going to go for this. And so Biden, how dare he say that? And actually, it was Biden who brought it up and said it about his son and got the dates wrong. And so we got the transcript, but we can't get the audio. And now they're really putting the clamps on the audio. Fox News version of the story, the Justice Department cannot release audio from President Biden's interview with special counsel Robert Hur due to the threat of potential deepfakes, the DOJ argued in a Friday court filing. The filing came as part of a legal challenge against Biden's efforts to exercise executive privilege over the recording to keep it from the public. The DOJ acknowledged on Friday that there is enough public audio available to already create AI deepfakes of both Biden and Hur, you think? But it said releasing the true recording would make it more difficult to disprove any false versions. The passage of time and advancements in audio, artificial intelligence, and deepfake technologies only amplify concerns about malicious manipulation of audio files. If the audio recording is released here, it's easy to foresee that it could be improperly altered, and that altered file could be passed off as an authentic recording and widely distributed. Jim, come on. It's not like you couldn't go somewhere to hear the official audio of this conversation. We all know what happened here. You know what happens to Biden as he gets to like the 45-minute or 60-minute mark in a debate. This was a 5-hour questioning. We have a pretty good idea of what happened here. And the fact that they got to come up with AI deepfakes and we got to lock it in a skiff. I mean, come on.
Greg, don't you understand that without this particular audio, those who want to make deepfake and, have mischief and pretend that the president said something he didn't, they have no other audio samples of the president they could use. This is the only recording of President Biden ever. I want to point out, one of my quickly developed YouTube addictions in the last couple of months has been this account called There I Ruined It, which uses AI to create just all kinds of wacky song parodies and stuff like that. They had to take down a bunch of stuff because they did, I think, Taylor Swift song parodies, including the breakup song about Travis Kelce with all kinds of football metaphors. And I thought our love was true, but there was a flag on the play and stuff like that. Taylor Swift lawyers came down like Valkyries from Valhalla and shut that one down. But they still have a bunch of really good stuff out there. The two I would recommend most are the Beach Boys singing 99 Problems by Jay-Z. I got 99 problems, but a B ain't one. It's brilliant. And then, of course, there is Hank Williams singing Ice Cube's Straight Outta Compton. It is absolutely beautiful, brilliant masterwork. And I just wish Hank Williams were alive to actually go and perform that. Because the thing is, because you're like this is remarkably simple. There are people who can make. There are tutorials online where you can do this. You take somebody's going to use AI to create a parody of the Three Martini Lunch, in which you and I are like, Joe Biden's awesome and he's young and if only we had the intellect of Kamala Harris, the whole 9 yards. But so this is going to happen no matter what. The idea of, we can't release this audio. The problem is not that this audio will be faked to make old Joe Biden look like he no longer has a memory and he doesn't know what he's talking about. The problem is that the truth will be that Joe Biden no longer has a memory and has no idea what he's talking about. So, in the long history of absurd excuses, this one ranks up there pretty darn high. And this one is particularly ridiculous. And I think it just demonstrates the degree to which, if we can't see it, this audio must make Joe Biden sound terrible. I'm trying to think what Mr. Magoo is my traditional pop culture reference there. And everyone keeps saying, no, we liked Mr. Magoo. There's something kind of cute and adorable and harmless about Mr. Magoo. But he will, Biden must sound really, really terrible if they're willing to put forth these kinds of absurd excuses to prevent this tape from being released.
No, that's exactly right. I'm waiting for the day now where Biden trips all over himself at an official White House podium and the press office is like, oh, no, that wasn't real. That was a deepfake.
Yes.
We saw him. You told us he was coming out. No, deepfake. That wasn't real.
Count the fingers. If I were Biden, I would get a fake sixth finger. And then, no matter how stupid you sound, from now until November, you're like, look, he said it on video. Like, look, count the fingers. There's 6 over there. It's not a real
cosmetic hand like Luke Skywalker with 6 fingers, or Count Rugen in Princess Bride, who actually had 6 fingers. Anyway, we'll see if we'll see if that happens. But quite a start to the week already, Jim. We'll see what Tuesday gives us.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please subscribe to the podcast if you don't already, and tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Monday and join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.